It's static time. The proposed revision of the Unitarian Universalist bylaws identifies 6 values centered in love and inseparable from each other. On the 5th Sunday of the season, we call to mind the 5th such value, generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality.
Please rise and body your spirit to sing hymn number 138 in the gray hymnal, These Things Shall Be.
These things shall be a laughter is, and new the world hath known shall rise, with flame of freedom in their souls, and light of science in their eyes. Nation with nation, land with land, unharmed shall live as comrades free. In every mind and heart shall throb the pulse of one humanity. My friendship hitherto was in, or by great poets have divined, shall burn as tempest within the calm, clear spirit of the mind. New wood shall bloom of laughter mold, and higher music thrill the skies, and every life a song shall be, when all the earth is paradise.
Good morning. I'm Louise Alcorn, she, her, your celebrant this morning.
And I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, Zir or he, him.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Our building is located on land that has been home to various peoples in the last 12,000 years, including at the beginning of European encroachment, the Iowa, Sauk, and Meskwaki. These lands were also once home in much greater numbers to the now endangered buff-breasted sandpiper. As we enter this space, the ghosts of humans and other animals past are among us. Let us recommit to understanding the history of the land it occupies and to owning our part in the work of education, reparation, and healing for all species.
Our purpose is to associate ourselves together for the study and practice of morality and religion as interpreted by the growing thought and noblest lives of humanity, hoping thereby to prove helpful to one another and to promote truth, righteousness, and love in the world.
This bond of union is reiterated in our mission to grow ethically and spiritually, serve justly, and love radically.
It's a blessing you were born. It matters what you do. Your experience of the divine is true, and you don't have to go it alone.
Today is the 5th Sunday of winter. Can you tell? The moon is waxing gibbous, and the full wolf moon will be Thursday.
Thursday, January 25th, the day of the full moon, is also the Jewish holiday Tu B'Shvat, literally New Year of the Trees. In contemporary Israel, the day is celebrated as an ecological awareness day, and trees are planted in celebration. The same day on the Hindu calendar is Taipusam, which commemorates the victory of Hindu god Murugan over the demon Surapadman. The full moon also begins the new year in Mahayana Buddhism. And on the Christian liturgical calendar, today is the 3rd of 6 Sundays of ordinary time in between Epiphany and the beginning of Lent.
A special welcome to our visitors. If you are here with children, feel free to keep them seated with you because, you know, you're at home. Oh, that's from Zoom.
You're not at home.
You're not at home. You're here. That's delightful. If you are at home, they can sit with you. It's all good. If, however, they're here and they're feeling squirrely, there is a lovely We Worship space in the back where you can hang out with them.
Or if any of our adults are feeling squirrely.
Yeah. You know who you are. Okay. Newcomers are invited to a UU Curiosity conversation on the first Sunday of every month. The next one will be February 4th. Finally, please do make sure your mics are muted throughout the service if you are on Zoom, or if you have a mic in the audience. I don't know how that works.
Our theme of the month for January is pluralism. Our connection circles are small groups that gather to explore the monthly theme and build relationship. It's a key way we live out our mission to grow ethically and spiritually. If you're not in one, please sign up, become part of a group. It's not too late. We begin with the lighting of our chalice.
Please say with me the chalice lighting words in your order of service. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. Our invocation is a responsive reading in your gray hymnal, number 646. The people on my left-hand side here of the room will begin with me.
And the people on my right-hand side of the room will respond with me with the indented italicized word.
And I don't have my hymnal, sorry.
But the text is here.
No, never mind. We clasp the hands of those that go before us.
And the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms, and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance.
And the larger circle of all creatures.
Passing in and out of life, who move also in a dance.
To a music so subtle and vast that no ear hears it. Join now in our sung invocation. The words are in your order of service.
Good morning. My name is Birch Spick. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and I am your faith formation and congregational life coordinator. Today's story is a story about a place maybe like this one, maybe a place like this place we aspire to be in, called a church for all. This month, as we explore pluralism, what we're exploring is how we celebrate all of the differences of people who come into community with us and people with whom we build community. So as we tell this story, imagine all of the people in this story embraced by this church for all, and imagine how we can put that work into action ourselves in this community to make this a church for all. Sunday waking, day is breaking, let's go to our church for all.
Church bells ringing, joyful noises, choir singing, laughing voices.
Candles glowing, banners flowing, come enter our church for all.
Weak and healthy, neat and messy, poor and wealthy, plain and dressy.
All embracing, spirit gracing, each one at our church for all.
Bodies wiggling, mommies reading, children giggling, daddies pleading.
Toddlers flailing, babies wailing, there's room at our church for all.
Hands receiving, hands connecting, hearts believing, hearts accepting.
Feel the Spirit. Can you hear it? It's here at our church for all. Join me in singing our children to their classroom with the hymn in the back of your hymnal, the Children's Benediction. Go in joy, go in peace to greet the day. With open hearts embrace life's wonder. We will guide you, we will love you on your way.
Got so wrapped up in the song, I almost forgot to come up. Thank you, choir. I'm Laura Berardi. I'm a member of the pastoral care team. We are a community of memory and hope, a community of hands and hearts. We gather to share our laughter and our tears, and to bear witness to one another as we journey through sorrows and joys. We didn't have any joys or sorrows submitted this week. You can always submit them online or by emailing us at pastoralcareteam@ucdsm.org. Of course, just because none were formally submitted doesn't mean they don't exist. So let us share together now the names of anyone we know who could use some special care and attention. You may call the name out loud, or if you're with us on Zoom, type it into the chat. As we share these names, may the love of this community hold them all. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May we not look away when we are needed. May the grieving be comforted, the weary find rest, the broken places be healed, and may joy and laughter be abundant. We light 3 candles this morning. One for the names shared aloud, one for those shared in writing, and one for all of those joys and sorrows held silently among us.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul.
Dear ground of peace, dear spark that awakens in human hearts desire for justice, dear life. Countless women and men, past and present, have worked tirelessly advocating for equality and promoting peace. We are so grateful for their work, for the ways they make our world a kinder place, for the example they provide of courage and compassion that helps sustain us in our own efforts. The Trevor Project, an American nonprofit, focuses on suicide prevention efforts among LGBTQ youth. The project provides crisis services and conducts research, advocacy, education, public awareness to foster accepting, inclusive environments for youth at home, schools, and colleges. Sindiana of Galilee in Israel, founded by women striving for social justice, brings Arab and Jewish women to work side by side, sharing a vision of peaceful coexistence as they lovingly market olive oils, almonds, honey, and other items. Conductor Ron Davis Alvarez in Sweden founded the Dream Orchestra, comprised of unaccompanied minors from Afghanistan, Syria, Eritrea, and Albania. Here in the U.S., the nonprofit project Street Vet, founded by Dr. Quane Stewart, provides medical care to the pets of people experiencing homelessness. And Stacy Buckner's program, Off-Road Outreach, brings showers, laundry, meals, and more to homeless veterans wherever they are. Mozambique's most influential contemporary choreographer, Panebra Gabriel Canada, uses bodies in motion to artfully trace the complex recent history of his country. Australia's Thomas Mayo calmly continues the work to give Indigenous people a voice in Parliament after Australian voters rejected the proposal a few months ago. In Ghana, Osei Boateng uses a converted van to deliver medical care to thousands of people in remote communities of his country. Brian Stevenson's Equal Justice Initiative, the physicians of Doctors Without Borders, the staff and volunteers at Planned Parenthood and at the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. For these and the myriad other good people doing good work, our deepest gratitude. May we know one another better. May we foster trust. May we seek and find collaborators and more collaborators to continue the good work that is before us. May we nurture relationships. May we be curious, not judgmental, about our differences. May we delight in the ways that we challenge one another. May we recognize the face of despair when it approaches and see through it to hope. May we be mindful of the violence, the pain, the loss, the grief in our world, and also mindful that all of us are immersed in an ocean of love. May we name injustice. May we soften our hearts. May we speak truth to power. May we be filled with loving kindness. And so for all that has been spoken and for all that we are holding silently in our hearts today, we observe a minute of silence. Blessed be. Amen.
I met my best friend forever, my BFF, when I was 21. I'd never had a best friend before, not a best friend. It just kind of happened without either of us much acknowledging it, which is a pattern we've repeated. We just kind of muddle along. For over 30 years, we've talked and joked and vacationed together. I was in their wedding, and their husband and child are my found family with long-standing traditions and silly jokes and made-up words. When their child was 9 months old, I was officially inducted as fairy godmother. I even had a sparkly wand and a tiara. As an Iowa librarian, I obviously endowed my godchild with board books and a stuffed pig. Some years ago, my godchild returned home from college in crisis. Within the blessed shelter of unconditional parental love, they realized that they were suffering from gender dysphoria. In a new life journey, they chose to transition, and my godson is now my goddaughter. She still has Piggy. I still love her like family. Her delightful partner uses they pronouns, and I'm currently adjusting my vocabulary. My grandmother went to a finishing school in 1920. Like many women of her generation and class, she hated if you wore untidy clothes, fuss with your hair, or use the word they to describe a singular person instead of a group. I had long ago rejected the racism and homophobia that was her privilege-based default, but I swear the grammar thing still pings in my head. As I work to embrace a wider human experience, I still hear her voice in my head chiding and correcting. They is for two or more people. Yes, Nana. In a parallel but unique journey, my godchild's parent, my best friend forever, also realized that they were living the wrong gender. In the way of our long friendship, this wasn't a huge conversation, but instead, hey friend, I'm coming to this realization. Oh, okay, I love you. You need anything? I'll let you know. That's how we roll. When he had surgery, I distracted his husband and picked up takeout because humor and food are my love languages. Completely by accident, I had introduced him to a nearby friend from high school who transitioned some years ago, and I gather that connection has been life-changing. I had no idea. I just knew that my high school friend was a great tattoo artist. I fumble around, and sometimes I get it right. Reverend Garmon sent me the original blog post on which Zir's sermon today is based. To borrow loosely, very loosely, from one point he made, liberals sometimes claim to be colorblind when talking about race, and more lately, gender blind. Now, I do not fool myself that I'm colorblind about race because I'm American and thus a historical mess by definition. Gender is, if anything, even harder to rethink. It's so encoded in our language, in our initial identification of people, that it's deeply disconcerting to adjust one's use of pronouns. I'm better these days about misgendering my friends, but I still slip. I particularly struggle when I'm talking about past events, as my brain stored that memory with not only the events and the participants, but also the dead names and genders of those participants as points of indexing. Librarians think a lot about indexing. So I am working on re-indexing my gender taxonomy. It's a librarian thing. However, the other day I misgendered my cat, so. Ultimately, if it comes to it, I will stand on a barricade and defend all my friends' right to exist with respect. But mostly I just muddle along like any other well-meaning human. And to celebrate my BFF's new Social Security card with his new name, I'm ordering silly gifts with his new monogram on them. Support comes in many forms. Thank you. We have now come to the offering. Our Faith in Action partners are Free Store, which helps provide household items to families recovering from domestic violence and other trauma, and the Iowa Trans Mutual Aid Fund, which supports trans and gender diverse Iowans as they access gender affirming care. Yay us. Our fifth principle, our covenant to affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of democratic process, expresses our commitment both to individual conscience and to democracy. The morning offertory also expresses both of those commitments. The beloved community is truly the work of the people. There is no other support for this congregation but yours. Upon your conscience we depend, as well as the vote of your feet to be here, particularly meaningful today. Thank you. The vote of your hands and of your wallet to sustain and grow this community of memory and hope. For together we bring our generosity to effect healing. Let there be an offering.
Our theme for the month is pluralism. 2 weeks ago, I mentioned the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity to help us think about how we might move beyond our tendency to minimize cultural difference and better appreciate how deep culture goes, and open ourselves to learning how to better adapt to different cultural contexts. Last week in the Zoom service, we did some history as a subversive activity, looking at how white landowners in the 17th century invented the American tradition of racism and how that legacy affects and infects everything. Understanding these matters helps us live out and live into our value pluralism. It's a value that Unitarian Universalists are considering codifying in our association's bylaws with language that says, we celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Today we turn to pluralism of sexual orientations and gender identities. In our free and responsible search for truth and meaning, we always confront two huge mysteries: ourselves and other people. Whatever your sexual orientation or gender identity, just because you are or have that orientation and that identity doesn't mean that you understand it. We remain mysteries to ourselves, and other people are also mysteries to us. We cannot clear up these mysteries, but we can live into them, manage them. We can acquire some helpful conceptual tools. So I propose today to lead you on a journey, a tour through a landscape of ideas and concepts, queer theory. Our starting point is that last sentence from our description of pluralism. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. That's our starting point. And it's also our ending point. What we will find is that we are led back to where we started, our covenant to embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. As T.S. Eliot said, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. And that's what this exploration will be. And we will arrive where we started, only we might know the place a bit better. So concept number one, ignore it or try to. According to this concept, the thing to do with sexuality that may be different from your own is ignore it. What consenting people do in private is irrelevant, has nothing to do with our shared life. Don't ask, don't tell. Since sexual orientation has nothing to do with character, reliability, competence, trustworthiness, has nothing to do with whether a person has inherent worth and dignity, it should just be ignored. Let's dispense with labels like lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and treat all people as just people. In race relations, this attitude was called being or trying to be colorblind. Similarly, we might be or try to be sexual orientation blind or gender identity blind. But then we get to concept number two, honoring identity. The problem with concept number one is that people want to be seen and honored, acknowledged and respected for all of who they are. During the 4 years in the early 1990s that I was a professor of philosophy at Fisk University, a school with a predominantly African-American student body, I saw every day how important African-American identity was to my students. Certainly they wanted to be respected, and they wanted to be respected as African Americans, as what they were. They didn't want white people pretending to be unable to see color. We like to be recognized for who we are. We don't want our identity to be socially erased. We want to be proud of who we are, not told that a key part of our experience is meaningless. Similarly, many LGBTQ folk want to be recognized and accepted for all of who they are. We are entitled to equal concern and respect, but we don't have to pretend that we're all the same. We want to be recognized for who we are. Color blindness or gender blindness or sexual orientation blindness tries with varying degrees of earnestness to pretend that we are all the same. And this pretense has the effect of projecting the majority's norms. That's how color or gender or sexual orientation blindness plays out. Pretending that there's no difference between black and white is basically tantamount to pretending that we're all white. Colorblindness allows the norms and assumptions of white culture to hold unchallenged sway. In the same way, sexual orientation blindness amounts to projecting heteronormativity. Now we start getting into areas that are going to be, for many of us, a bit more challenging. You see, while many in the LGBT community worked hard for recognition of same-sex marriage, not all LGBTQ folk have unalloyed enthusiasm for the spread of acceptance of same-sex marriage. Marriage itself is heteronormative, they point out. Marriage takes the heterosexual model as the norm. You have one partner, you live together, run a household together for life, for at least starting out with the intention that it be for life. But maybe that model should be challenged rather than pursued. Some queer theorists criticize the traditional family as a deeply problematic institution that ought to be challenged and called into question. And so we come to concept number 3. Identity and everything are shifting cultural constructs. Some queer theorists also challenge the very idea of identity. So concept number 1 was let's ignore it, and concept number 2 was let's recognize identity as a way to respect who a person is. And now we come to concept number 3, that identity may be a problematic notion. Starting with gender, let's acknowledge that the clear black and white categories, male and female, aren't really so clear. Some people are born intersex, where the biological sex cannot be clearly classified as either male or female, and the practice of forcibly resolving the ambiguity, forcing the child into one box or the other, sometimes using surgery to help resolve the ambiguity on one side or the other, has been harmful and traumatic. Let us learn to accept ambiguity. In fact, suggest some queer theorists, more gender ambiguity might be a good thing, might be good for us all. We might all dress and style ourselves in ways designed to make it harder instead of easier for others to categorize our gender at a glance. We might all dress that way. I remember years ago, if I saw someone like at a mall and I couldn't immediately tell if it was a woman or a man, I wanted to know. And I would keep stealing glances to see if I could ascertain which one it was. I have learned to be more comfortable with not needing to know. Sexuality is culturally constructed, and culture is constantly shifting. Cultural studies professor Nikki Sullivan writes in A Critical Introduction to Queer Theory, sexuality is not natural, but rather is discursively constructed. Moreover, sexuality is constructed, construed, experienced, and understood in culturally and historically specific ways. Thus, we could say that there can be no true or correct account of heterosexuality or homosexuality or bisexuality. Contemporary views of particular relationships and practices are not necessarily any more enlightened or any less symptomatic of the times than those held by previous generations. Queer theorist David Halperin describes 3 very different cultures in which sexual contact between older men and boys has been acceptable. The ancient Greeks, some Native American tribes, and New Guinea tribesmen. He asks, is this the same sexuality? Such contact has some superficial similarities, including acceptability in all 3 cultures, yet the social contexts and the meanings of that contact are so varied And the cultural understanding of what was going on was so diverse that we really can't call it the same sexuality. The brilliant French philosopher and social theorist Michel Foucault pioneered new ways to think about and understand ourselves, but we're going to need a break before we start getting all Foucault up in here. So let's have our interlude. Michel Foucault is a founding figure for a number of kinds of study, including queer theory. His 3-volume History of Sexuality revealed how sexuality has been culturally constructed in Western civilization. In Britain and much of Europe, prior to the 1880s, Foucault points out sodomy meant any form of sexuality that did not have procreation as its aim. So using birth control counted as sodomy, and penalties against sodomy were severe. Analysis of the time reveals that the laws were directed against acts, not against a particular type of person. There was no understanding of sexual orientation as an identity any more than we have an understanding of adulterer or, say, person who parks in a no parking zone as an identity. It wasn't until the later 1800s that particular acts came to be seen as expressions of an individual psyche or as evidence of inclinations of a certain type of subject. Certain forms of sexuality moved from being seen as horrible acts which anyone might succumb to being seen as the expression of a particular type of person. As Sigmund Freud expressed and magnified the new way of thinking, sex was at the root of everything about us, and thus the homosexual became a personage, a life form, characterized as a certain type of degenerate whose entire character, everything about him, was corrupted by his sexuality. Such a viewpoint hardly seems to us like progress, yet as traumatic and disastrous as that cultural phase was for many, it paved the way for later attitudes. Once we saw sexual orientation as an identity, subject to treatment rather than to criminal or moral judgment, the ground was laid for the next step. Only then could culture move to seeing that identity is not harming anyone else, and from there to it's not harming themselves either, and then to being tolerated, to being accepted, to being welcomed, to being celebrated as a worthy and beautiful part of the diverse spectrum of human expression. And that's a huge change, a huge series of changes, all within the last 130 years or so. The field of queer theory, then, examining the vastly different ways that sexuality manifests and is understood in different cultures and times, raises for us the possibility that our cultural changes in the last 130 years might not be a matter of finally seeing the truth that has been there all along. Rather, there might be a matter of the contingent, accidental evolution of our concepts, evolving in ways outside of anyone's explicit control or intention, but not dictated by something called objective reality either. This metaphor of evolution is apt because in literal evolution, evolution of species, the objective environment establishes conditions in which species will fail, will never appear, or will quickly die out. And yet the objective environment does not guide or direct evolution toward one true species. Rather, the objective environment is one in which increasingly diverse species emerge and find ways to be successful. And by analogy, then, we might say the reality of our biology establishes conditions in which some concepts of sexuality will never appear or quickly die out, yet biological reality does not guide or direct our understanding toward any one truth. Rather, the array of possible ways of thinking about sexuality, while constrained by the facts of biology, remains as infinite as the array of possible species. If you are having a hard time wrapping your mind around how it can be constrained and yet still infinite, look, suppose I tell you to pick a number, and then I say it has to be a prime number. Your choice is now constrained. The number has to be a whole number, a positive prime integer, and prime. But there's an infinite number of prime numbers. So constrained and yet still infinite. Biology gives us some constraints, but the possibilities for cultural constructions of what to do with those constraints remain infinite. So let's review. First level, forget about labels and categories, just love people. Second level, it's not so simple. People want to be recognized and respected for who they are. We have an identity as a man or a woman or as non-binary. We have an identity as a person of color or not. We have an identity as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or straight. And my identity in these areas is not relevant to my rights, not relevant to whether or not I may be oppressed or discriminated against, not relevant to my claim to equal concern and respect. But it is relevant to my sense of who I am. And I want my society to recognize and honor and respect who I am. A don't ask, don't tell policy requires me to hide who I am. Actually, it doesn't require straight white men like me to hide who we are, because under white normativity, heteronormativity, my particular identity happens to be the one that's assumed rather than hidden, which is why recognizing and respecting alternative identities matters. And then comes this third level. The notion of identity itself is challenged. Not only are the categories fuzzy and unreliable, with people falling along continua rather than into one neat box or another, but the continua themselves are contingent social constructs, subject to deconstruction and reconstruction into something different. Sexuality is plastic, and the ways we make meaning of it are even more plastic. Which brings us to making peace with ambiguity. It's confusing. It's changing. We can't really get a handle on the right way to think about it, because any way to think about it is just one more contemporary product of culture and language and power. No matter how enlightened our attitudes may be, no matter how up we are on LGBTQ literature, the latest books on gender and transgender, biology, psychology, and experience, no matter how conversant we are in heteronormative critique, it'll all be different in 50 years, if not sooner. And your currently enlightened attitude will seem to people then benighted. So queer theory helps us let go of our assumptions and not replace them with new ones. Queer theory itself is not so much a theory as an understanding that no theory can be the one right theory. Queer theory helps us resist the temptation to resolve ambiguity. For in that space of ambiguity, we come back to where we started, simply standing on the side of love, siding with love. Tell me what's important to you. It might be your sexual identity, your gender identity, your racial identity, or it might not be. Tell or don't tell, it's up to you. And I might ask or not ask, though keeping up amid the constantly shifting cultural landscape with what questions are inappropriate is part of the ongoing task. If I do ask, you can answer or not answer, or say it's not important to you, or tell me that you really just don't know. This is how we embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. It requires the courage to stand in ambiguity and shine a warm, embracing light. There may once have been good reasons for wanting to resolve the ambiguities of sex and sexuality. It may have even felt unbearable not to know, and to know instantly who was and who was not automatically in the category of potential mates for reproduction. With a little practice, though, we can be comfortable not knowing, not needing to know. Our journey through queer theory has led us back to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. And what we know about this place is just how indefinite and undefined everything is. Embracing our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect requires neither a rejection of nor an insistence on any notion of identity. What it does require is courage, the courage to take each ambiguous moment as it is, the courage to love each ambiguous person, however he or she or Z presents. Amen.
Please rise in body or spirit to sing our closing hymn, Here You Will Always Be Home, which can be found on the insert in your order of service. As this is our first time with this new hymn, for today I will sing the verses on my own, more freely than the rhythms that are notated there, for those who are paying attention, and invite you to please join me and the choir on singing each refrain. Just before the third and fourth times that we sing the refrain together, the melody will modulate to the next higher key, as Bruce is so fond of doing. At the very end, we will repeat the very last line one more time as shown. To introduce you to the tune of the refrain, I will sing it through once on my own before starting the first verse, after a few measures of piano which precede it.
We hold you in spirit, we hold you in love, we open ourselves to a myriad truths. Take joy in your freedom, find peace in our care, for here you will always be home. I've been the one who hides inside. I've been the wanderer out in the storm. I've been confused, I've laughed, I've cried. Felt like I'm seeking my truth all alone, fighting an uphill battle and nobody else could understand. But somewhere behind the shadows are people who can. We hold you in spirit, we hold you in love, we open ourselves to a myriad there be others much like me, radically loving and healing the scars, finding our own divinity, blessing each other for all that we are. Each of us brings an offering full of our authenticity, and when we come together, we want you to see. We hold you in spirit, we hold you in love, we open ourselves to a myriad truths. Take joy in your freedom, find peace in our care, for here you will always be home. Open to vulnerability, we sit with discomfort and hold your space, nurturing possibility. Learn from each other and offer grace. Each has a sacred viewpoint. Everyone loved and true and whole. And as we stretch our comfort, our vision unfolds. We hold in spirit, we hold you in love, we open ourselves to a myriad truths. Take joy in your freedom, find peace in our care, for here you will always be home. Here in this soul community, welcomes both and a not either or. We'll be the change we wish to see. We are the ones we've been waiting for. And as we grow together, we keep the future in our sight, serving our siblings justly, expanding the light. We hold you in spirit, we hold you in love, we open ourselves to a myriad truths. Take joy in your freedom, find peace in our care, for here you will always be home. Yes, here you will always be home.
Well done, thank you.
Please say with me our unison chalice extinguishing words as you extinguish your chalices or candles at home and here. We have a calling in this world. We are called to honor diversity, to respect differences with dignity, and to challenge those who would forbid it. We are people of a wide path. Let us be wide in affection and go our way in peace.
Take courage, friends. The way is often unclear. The path may be steep and difficult. Yet take courage, for there is always also this truth: you are not alone. Go in peace.